Hi, and welcome back to the WordPress Edge podcast, the ultimate destination for professionals looking to harness the power of WordPress for large-scale enterprise solutions. I'm your host, Landon Pasquale, enterprise web strategist at AmericanEagle.com. In this episode, we're going to be going to the edge with developer experience on enterprise WordPress. To discuss this exciting topic, I'm joined by senior WordPress developer, Carmine Colicino. Carmine, thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
So, to start us off, Carmine, tell us where you're from and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm originally from Italy. That's where I'm from. I'm currently living in Sardinia, which is the beautiful island in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. I've been I'm a senior WordPress developer here at AmericanEagle.com, and I've been working in with WordPress for like more than 10 years, and I've been involved in many projects, specifically and mostly enterprise level projects, with big clients and kind of big scale type of projects.
Awesome. What drew you to WordPress initially?
It's interesting because, I think as, many people do, they start to use WordPress as, for personal projects, like pet projects, something that, they start small and then, eventually, they get drawn into it and, they become more interested and, they start to essentially get to know WordPress better and to use, the enhanced functionality that WordPress, all the capabilities that WordPress gives you. And yeah, that's how I started really. So I started, working on a personal project. Then obviously I have a background in computer science. So I started university. And that's obviously where I also studied, web technologies. And WordPress was actually one of the platforms that we were using also at the university.
Interesting.
Yes, absolutely. So
very cool. So you mentioned that you've worked on some really large enterprise scale projects. What makes enterprise WordPress different from other ways of doing WordPress?
I think from a programmer perspective, there isn't much of a difference. So I personally tend to consider everything, with the highest quality in mind as possible. So even if I work on a small scale project, quality is, at the top of my mind.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that the quality of my delivery is always, as best as possible.
Yeah.
However, when it comes to enterprise projects, there are so many things that you need to consider as well. Apart from obviously, quality, those are given basically. But there's, performance, there's, security, scalability, because obviously, you're talking about big size enterprises that have huge databases, a huge amount of, posts and, custom post types. And so you want to make sure that the site, is future proof.
Yeah.
So it keeps, performing as expected, even after, 2 or 3 years when, the content will start growing. So, I think these are the main, probably the main differences between, a regular, medium to small size project to, what can be considered an enterprise project.
Yeah. I mean, if I think about the enterprise projects I've been involved with, it seems that a small, ill-considered decision at the beginning could have huge ramifications at the end. And so that's got to be a huge part of what you're doing.
Absolutely. I think, the kind of the architecture part, the part that we do at the beginning of a project, the discovery phase that we have with a client, where we go through, all their needs, all their problems that maybe they had, with they're having with the current platform or with a legacy platform. And trying to understand how we can help them to solve these problems, and the technologies, the services, the platforms that we can use, obviously along with WordPress, to solve these problems. I think it's a fundamental part of what we do in an enterprise project. It's fundamental. You can't, just can't take it for granted. You can't just, jump on a project and say, okay, I'm going to do this. It's not going to work. So you need to ponder everything, from the very beginning and, explore all the potential, solutions. What we do, for example, especially with big clients, we do POCs. So, proof of concept. So whenever we want to, present something to the client, we want to demonstrate to them that in this case, WordPress is able to solve one of their problems or their problems. So we basically create like a demo of what the platform, what the future platform would look like, how would it work, and so we help the client understand what WordPress will be able to give you, and we help essentially in solving your problems.
Yeah, we've seen those POCs be incredibly helpful because it allows people to really see and visualize and
Yeah,
understand, experience what they've only heard about kind of hypothetically as we've discussed it with them.
exactly. It's important, as you say. It kind of gives you a visual clue of what they're getting, because sometimes, especially at the beginning of a project, we tend to consider things in a more kind of abstract way. And I get it. It's easier for us, for tech people to understand, to work with a more abstract kind of concept. But for the clients or for like non-tech people, it's really hard to understand, a non-abstract or non-practical,
Yeah.
element,
Yep.
right? So the POC is a nice instrument, it's a nice tool that we have. It kind of helps us, but it helps the client as well to really understand.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned talking to the client and understanding what their values are. As your role as a senior developer, you're engaging with the client pretty heavily, aren't you?
Yes, absolutely. As a senior developer, especially when I've been, project lead on one of the, some of the projects, we do have, constant communication with the client. And especially, so we work in sprints, for example. So it's a agile scrum, it's a kind of methodology, software development methodology. So we do like a 2 weeks kind of sprint, right? So in these 2 weeks, we kind of prioritize the work that we need to deliver at the end of these 2 weeks. And at the end of these 2 weeks, we also have a meeting with a client, kind of what we call a sprint review, where we explain and we demo to the client what we have achieved during this 2 week sprint. And this gives us the opportunity to, first demonstrate, our work, how our work. And also it's an opportunity for them to actually switch their focus to something else. Maybe they want to move their, they want to move the focus on something different, something that's more important for them in the following kind of weeks or months. So the constant communication kind of helps us to bring more value to the project.
And that's key. We've seen clients who are used to working in ways where the development team goes off and disappears for 6 weeks, 3 months, and then come back with something, and it may or may not be right. And so what you just described really helps us de-risk that process, right?
That's what we call waterfall.
Yeah.
Right. So you start with requirements, you start developing, but you don't have communication with the client. Yeah. So the client doesn't really know what they're getting, basically. So until obviously, you get to a point where you have to show them what you've been doing over the last like 3 or 6 months. And they're like, no, this is not what I asked. And so that becomes pretty, problematic. Yeah. So that's why having this kind of constant iteration, communication, I think it's fundamental, especially for big projects. No,
it's key. So we're only 10 minutes into the podcast and we haven't talked about developer experience at all. Tell me a little bit. This has been really important to set up though, that topic and that engagement. Tell me a little bit, what is developer experience and why does that matter in an enterprise engagement?
Yeah, I think, developer experience is really important, especially, when you work with an enterprise organization, just because it kind of gives the developers a good scaffolding, in terms of what they have to do, the people that they will support them during the course of the entire project. So it may be, for example, support from the web strategist. There will be the main point of contact with the client. So we'll engage the client in trying to, again, understand where the value is. It may be the Scrum Master that will, basically take care of the board, take care of all the tickets, make sure that we prioritize and we work on the correct thing. And then from a technical perspective, it'll be all the, for example, the pipelines. So we make sure that every time we push some code, that code goes on to, staging environment that can be used for testing so that we don't, pollute the, the production environment with code that might be, harmful, for the live, especially for live sites, right? So it's all these little details that makes our life, a lot easier, especially with this, this big projects.
We want developers to have as many roadblocks taken away, right? We want to remove that friction so you guys can do the work that you do best. And I think ultimately the big draw for an enterprise organization is that's how you draw the best talent who's going to do the best work for you, right?
Yeah, exactly. You want us to basically make sure that we focus on the right thing.
Yeah.
Instead of having to, think about everything else again, communicating maybe too often with the client or, taking care of the board or, everything else that is not really relevant or that it doesn't match our skills or what we do.
Yeah. I mean, the example I've used previously is the rock star analogy. The developers are the rock star, right? And you have this whole group of people who are there to help let the rock star do their thing. Yes. And for developers, you're the ones who are building the real thing, right? You're the ones who are providing the real value. And we have all of these tools and all these people and all this process to help enable you to build the stuff and provide the value.
Yes, exactly.
Enterprise development's a little bit different than your kind of typical WordPress development. And I think it attracts a different sort of developer. What would you say the kind of profile or the typical enterprise developer is?
I think a typical profile maybe is, obviously, an enterprise level developer will need to have a good understanding of the tools that we use, day to day. So they will have to know, WordPress, of course, because we work with WordPress, mainly. They would also need to have a good understanding of the REST API, which is very important nowadays because, with all the kind of headless implementation, not just WordPress is not just a monolithic kind of architecture, but it can be used, as a kind of backend, as a content editing system, which is, what's best. And then everything else, can be integrated, with applications or any other technology. So yeah, REST API is important. I would say also GraphQL is another good thing to know. And in general, code best practices, that's also important. Although we do enforce, the best practices, using PHP sniffer, for example, to make sure that whenever we work on a project, and many developers are working on the same project, we try and enforce the same coding standards across all the developers. So even the way we format the code, the way we write code, we're trying to standardize it. Obviously, we let the developer, express kind of their creativity, right? But it's we're trying to keep things recognizable so that when the project goes live and then the support team, kicks in, then obviously, they know what to where to look for something, right? Yeah. So they will feel that code, that kind of style is, familiar.
Yeah, I think you hinted at it earlier, but I think what you're looking for in an enterprise developer is someone who's driven by that quality or that desire to tackle these big, challenging problems.
Yeah, absolutely. That's also another thing. That it's important to have the bigger picture in mind. Again, coming back to abstract concepts, having the understanding of what's coming next, not just looking at the at the short term, short medium term. I'm also trying to understand, try to code with the future proof in mind, and to make sure that code would be easily maintained by and maintainable by the other developer that are going to probably follow in the projects.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about at the very beginning the kind of need for scaling and for performance and for security. How does WordPress scale to offer that good developer experience that we've talked about, and why does that matter?
So I think, WordPress has improved a lot over the course of the last few years in terms of scalability. That's the very recent news that WooCommerce as well is kind of moving away from the built-in tables,
yeah,
and it's moving to custom tables, and that's for making the the WooCommerce experience in WordPress much more scalable than it was up until, a few months ago. Another thing, obviously, you need to understand the strengths and the weaknesses of the platform, because WordPress is a beautiful platform. It's used by I think 43% of the internet now. But as everything, it's not perfect. So you need to understand what can be done by other services, for example, that can be integrated with WordPress. Thinking about, for example, the search functionality probably is not the best functionality that WordPress gives you, but there are many things you can do to improve it and still use WordPress as your CMS, but have a better kind of, search experience. I don't know, we think about one of the projects that we worked on. We used Algolia, for example, to improve the search functionalities. There's obviously, many plugins that will give you access to Elasticsearch, for example, which is another nice, technology for search. So there are many things. It's important to understand, well, first of all, what's the client need specifically, for a specific project, and where that can be implemented.
Yeah.
So
what's fun about working at an enterprise scale is you get many opportunities for collaboration, not just developer to developer, but across the entire team with really different functions and roles. What is it that's appealing about that experience for developers?
I think collaboration is, again, it's fundamental. So you want to make sure that to keep the comms high at all times, among, between colleagues, and, with the clients, with everyone involved in the project. You want to make sure that you keep, the communication at a very, very high level. And just because that helps you, clarify any issues, any doubts. And I think it makes, the project more enjoyable. Ceremonies are really important, especially, in the Agile Scrum kind of methodology. We do daily stand-ups, for example, where, everyone talks about, what they're going to do during the day, if there are any blockers. And so in that case, for example, the Scrum Master will try and help, remove those blockers away from the developer, so that the developer can, deliver his work. So yeah, I think communication is always really, really important, especially in like big projects.
Something I've seen from the outside looking in, I'm not a developer, but I've noticed that when I see you guys work together, that someone will have an idea that someone else may not have thought of. And that collaboration means you get interesting ways of solving problems that are much better than what you would have had with just one individual trying to solve it.
Absolutely. When we write some new feature, new functionality, we create pull requests where our code basically gets reviewed by one of our colleagues, one or more colleagues. And that also helps you see a problem or see something that maybe you hadn't thought about from a different perspective. So it's really important to have feedback from your peers and, from your colleagues, even if they're not working on the same project. But most of the times, they will help you understand, help you look at things again from, with different eyes.
So one of the needs that enterprise organizations have is faster, more continuous development cycles, where you might need to be releasing code or at least releasing new features to the client regularly. That's a need for enterprise organizations, but devs really like that constant release cycle too. What is it about that cycle that enterprise devs enjoy so much?
I think it's the fact that, we as developers, we don't have to kind of worry that we, for example, misunderstood one of the client's, requirements or one of their requests. Because again, there's this constant, cycle, this constant communication with them every, 2 weeks or every week. So it's nice to be able to iterate on, on the feature, on the functionality that you write, instead of, having to do it, again, coming back to the waterfall concept, having to do it, at the beginning of a project, and then you go and, demo it to the client and it's not what they asked. And so you have to go back and, rewrite the entire, functionality maybe or an entire website. Maybe because you made, the wrong assumptions, or you just, misunderstood what the client asked, or maybe the client didn't know what they wanted in the
Until they
first
saw
place.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think the constant, again, the constant iteration really helps us, enjoy what we do and be more productive, definitely.
On live sites, you also get the added benefit of getting feedback from actual users to see how they use your site and help you think of better ways to serve them as well.
Absolutely. There are many ways we can actually, collect data. So trying to, implement features using a more kind of data-driven approach. So instead of just basing our, implementation or our features on, I don't know, designs, for example, we start to collect data from the actual users, see, and trying to understand, how real users are using our platform, are using our website. And so from there, we can, iteratively improve the user experience.
And everyone wins there, right? The developer wins because they're working on the best possible work they can. The organization wins because their users are happy, and the users win because they get what they're looking for.
Exactly.
Final question for you, Carmine. When you think about the value that happy developers with a great developer experience provide to a large organization, where do you see that value?
Happy developer is definitely more productive. It's definitely, willing to go the extra mile and, to help a colleague, and just, help solve the problem and, help the client because eventually this is what we do. We're trying to help the client to, achieve success, and their success is our success. So that's basically what we do and what a happy developer does.
I think the craftsmanship model is a real good way to think about this, right? Web development is a craft like anything else. And when you have a craftsman that is engaged and happy and loves the craft that he's doing, what he's going to produce is much more beautiful and long lasting than the kind of mass produced, off the shelf sort of assembly line type product.
Yes.
Carmine, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for
Appreciate
having
you
me.
flying all the way from Italy to stop by our studios.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Please come back again soon. Love to have you back.
I did. Thank you.
Thanks again for joining us at The Edge. I'm your host, Landon DiPasquale, and until the next episode, feed your WordPress obsession. For more information about today's episode and the topics discussed today, check out our dedicated WordPress Edge landing page at americaneagle.com/studios. So, Carmine, in an enterprise context, what does collaboration look like, especially across different roles?
Credo che nel contesto di un progetto enterprise la collaborazione sia molto importante. È quello che ti permette di appunto restare in contatto con il cliente e di restare in contatto comunque con i tuoi colleghi in modo tale che tutti possiate essere sulla stessa lunghezza d'onda. E avere appunto una costante collaborazione ti consente di capire quello che sono le necessità del cliente, e come rimediare eventualmente a dei problemi che sono insorti nel corso del progetto. Oh, sorry, did you want me to say this in English?
See,
Okay.
that was good.
That was awesome.